How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to Games Over Explained. On our previous episode, we finished a lot of wall improvements, and we did leave off where we were in the middle of a heat wave. I went ahead and fast-forwarded because I figured you guys wouldn't want to see that, so that's where we are. If you have not seen the previous episode, I am going to drop a link to the playlist in the description, that way you can get caught up. Today, we're going to be building a crypt, and it's going to require a lot of work to get there and a lot of speed. There's a few things that are a little time sensitive about the whole build that hopefully we can navigate pretty well. The first thing we're going to need to do is I actually need to get candles unlocked, and that is under furniture too. So we are going to need 30 chronicles and 20 textbooks, I think is what these are. Yep. All right. Let's go ahead and order our 20 textbooks and our 30 chronicles. Get those going. That way they can work on that while we are working on other things. The next thing we're going to need to do is we are going to need to collect some more limestone. I know, shocking. The reason we're going to do this is I need to create a temporary place for the bodies to move to. Where we want to put the entrance to the crypt is right where the graveyard currently is. So we are going to need to relocate these guys very temporarily, and that is the time-sensitive bit. When you pull the bodies out of the ground, you exhume them. They are on a very tight timeline before they disappear into bones and just decompose. It's actually faster than the game timer suggests it is. It'll tell you, oh, it's 4 days, but it's not. So we are going to have to move very quickly in that process. And to enable us to do that, we are going to build some sarcophagi over here. And this should allow us to do this a little faster, hopefully. So we're just going to plop these in right here. That way they're super close to the graveyard. We can pop the body, move them over. And then I am going to wait for them to get the limestone because they're not going to be able to get this done. Before we do that, one other thing I wanted to note on this episode is I somehow managed to forget to put corners on our gate towers. And none of you guys noticed it. So let's go ahead and get that knocked out real quick. That way it can be considered done. And then once I'm done with that, we will wait for the limestone to come in and we'll be able to move on with the build. Hey guys, quick editor's note here. You're going to see in this episode that I have dev tools up in my menu. I don't use that in Wythenshawe. I normally use that in my test builds. Here you can see Kidderminster, which is my test build, and you can see a million iterations of wall designs and different structures that I've attempted to build over the course of Wythenshawe's life. But I did want to offer an explanation as to why that is there. The explanation is I forgot to remove the mod before I recorded. So, all right, back to the episode. Okay, now comes the tricky part. They've gotten the sarcophagus done, and we are able to make the move, but we are going to need to do it extremely quickly. So let's give it a go. We're going to deconstruct the first one, and we're going to have the body exhumed. That way we can move the body once it's out. So Bernston has pulled the body out of the gravestone. The first thing we're going to do is immediately grab Bernston and right-click Adalbert and tell him to prioritize burial. It should give him the opportunity to take him and put him into the sarcophagus, and that is one done. So the next thing we need to do is try and repeat this. The next thing we're going to need to do is start the actual entrance to the crypt, and this is going to be a bit of a challenging build. We're going to have to try and phase this out as best we can because we are going to be digging under the church, which naturally means that we risk collapsing certain portions of the building. I have done this in a test build, and try as I might, I still had a couple situations where we had a little bit of collapse, so we are going to try to roll with the punches here and see what we can do to avoid it. So the first thing I need to do is I need to measure in 5, which should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is going to be where we start our entrance. So we're going to pull this back 3. That's going to be the first step. And I do think we probably are going to need to go ahead and deconstruct these limestone floors here. We'll rebuild the path once we get to the point where we can connect all this together. So let's wait for them to get this done. I am going to fast forward the game now that we are kind of out of the danger zone with these bodies. And I'll give them a minute to come over here and do this. Okay, and they've completed that phase, so now we're going to drag this out 2 more and then bring this across 3 like that. And that should complete our L shape to get us started. It is going to take a minute again for them to get this done, so we will take this opportunity to check in on the tower, make sure that they finished it. There we go. That looks much better now that we put the corners on there. I didn't even see it until after I had already posted the previous video, and I was like, oh, well, I guess somebody will probably see it, and then nobody said anything, and I was genuinely shocked. So maybe I'm the only one that cares that much about the corners. Okay, and they have finished this, so the next thing we need to do is grab some stairs. And this is, of course, going to be one of those situations where we're going to have to play around with the stairs a little bit because there are things inside. And of course, we don't have enough wood to finish that. So we are going to have to take a trip. Where the heck is it? Into our forestry area here. I got a little lost there, a little turned around. So we are going to need to take down some of these trees. That way we can collect some wood and actually build the stairs that we need. All right, the Burga has arrived to build the stairs. Once we have access down here, I'm going to give them a second to clean up this area and get some of these resources out of here. And then we're going to pretty much do the thing where we just build a new set of stairs here, break down this one, and then collect the stuff that is under this set of stairs and put another set down. All right, we are placing our limestone stairs into the hole that we have built. Once that's completed, we'll be able to tear down the wooden stairs and then put the limestone stairs back on the other side. Okay, and our stairs are done, so I'm going to explain to you what we're going to do next. We need to kind of pull this back one at a time. If I try to issue too many commands at once, they risk stranding themselves or not completing it really. So it's kind of one of those situations where you have to do things in a really particular order in order to get this done correctly. So John and Jerry have arrived, and they're going to pull back our first layer here. Once they're done with that, all we're going to do is pull back this next layer. And of course, we're going to have clay in here that needs to be collected. So actually, let me pause for a second and make sure that that gets collected before we actually do this next wave. That way we don't risk finding ourselves in a situation where we have resources down in the pit that we're not going to be able to get to without building some weird stairs contraptions. All right, it is morning and welcome to autumn in Wythenshawe. I'm going to go ahead and clear that notification, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our limestone walls. We are going to place that here inside the hole where they have cleared out all of this land. What we want to do is create a landing of sorts for the stairs, and then the next thing that's going to happen is we're actually going to take not the limestone block but the limestone stairs, and we're just going to repeat what we had done previously. This is going to allow them to go down one more level, and this will be the entrance into our crypt. So that is going to be the next phase. I'm going to give them a second to try and get that done, and then we'll be able to move on with actually digging it out. Okay, so this is going to be the tricky part. We're going to try and decrease our view here. We're going to go down a few layers, try and get it right where the transition happens between above ground and underground. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of just work our way back. We're going to grab this and bring it up like that, and then we're going to check where we're at. We're going to pop back down and try to bring this up like that. Yep, looks good. And then I believe we have one more, and that should do it. Yeah, that looks good. And then once they've completed that, we'll get started on pushing back the columns. And you'll see what I mean once we actually get to that point. In the meantime, we should be able to look at our research, and it does look like we have the ability to unlock furniture too, which is integral to what we are trying to do here. So let's go ahead and unlock that. The other thing I want to go ahead and do is also try and work on armor or two. We need better armor. I think we're just kind of coasting by right now, relying on the wall to protect us, but it would be nice to be able to protect our settlers even more. That is going to require 30 chronicles and 15 textbooks, so let's go ahead and get inside the church and get those ordered up. Now that that's done, we get to watch them mine out this area. The tricky part's going to be building around the church because we don't want to cause any stability issues, so we kind of have to take this a little bit at a time as they go through and mine this out. All right, and it looks like we do get to deal with a raid first thing here, so let's go ahead and take up our arms, and we will deal with them once we get them over to the settlement. All right, it is morning, and as you can see, we are under attack right now. I actually want to use this opportunity as, to try and test out how our towers are going to work in relation to keeping people out of Wythenshawe. So we're actually just going to grab, let's see, who has the best armor here? probably Sinmund. We're going to grab Sinmund. And I do want to put him on top of one of the tall towers. I'm curious to see if they can actually reach from here. So we are going to find that out here in just a moment once he gets into position. In the meantime, I am going to actually pause for a moment and make sure we grab everybody and move them over here. That way, if we need to defend, we certainly can. And we'll see how this works out. It's a good opportunity to test out our wall because we haven't gotten to test it really in this capacity, at least since the gate's been built. I've had a few little raids, nothing that was particularly significant. So I think that really at the end of the day, we're going to just try this out, see what happens, and hope for the best. Because as we know, I don't have a great track record with dealing with the raids, but hopefully the traps will wear them out a little bit. And yep, okay, there we go. We didn't even get the opportunity to test it out. It was 6 hours and 45 minutes and it timed out. We did kill 2 of them though in the process, which is pretty interesting. I do want to see if we can get Sinmund up top first and see if he can still target people. There he goes to the other tower. And let's see. Can he aim? Yes, he can. Impressive. All right. That increases his range a ridiculous amount, actually. Very cool. All right, so let's go ahead and unmanage everybody and get back to the task at hand. Okay, and the next phase here is we're just going to come up like this and then 3 across. And that should give us the entryway to the crypt. I do have some plans in the future to improve the aesthetics of this once we get some of the more architectural updates that are coming soon. But in the meantime, we're going to stick with our tried and true wooden barriers and wooden beams and things of that nature to try and support the build itself. So once they're done clearing that, we are going to place a wooden beam here immediately before we proceed. And that should provide a little extra stability. Like I said, when I was doing this test build, I collapsed my test churches a number of times in pretty significant ways. So I'm trying to avoid that in this go, and hopefully some of the planning will come into play and we will escape unscathed. Okay, so for the next part of the project, we are going to mine out like this, that, and then that. And we're going to leave this block here in the middle to provide some natural support underneath our church, and we can make sure we don't collapse. I am going to show you guys some screenshots that I kind of looked at that helped inspire me a little bit on this build. One of the first things that came to mind when I was thinking about crypts for some reason was the Game of Thrones crypts underneath Winterfell. I always thought they were pretty atmospheric, even though they didn't really use it all that well in the show itself. Though I know that's a controversial ending to a show, I guess. But it's one of the main inspirations. And then I saw some other pictures out there that I am going to be sharing here. That way you guys can see kind of some of the thoughts I had as I was kind of researching for how this really should look, because I personally don't spend a lot of time in crypts. It's to me not really something that I spend my free time on. So I ultimately needed to find some source of inspiration to be able to make this look as realistic as possible and make it look a little cohesive and kind of like something we intentionally designed and knew what we were doing. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring out another strip of 4 like this. And these are going to be our next wave of barriers or beams. I don't know why I keep saying barriers. We're going to put more beams up. The more beams, the better. The less risk we have of collapsing this area. Ultimately, we really just want to make sure it's just really well supported. I think probably if I were to redo this again, I would start with building the crypt and then build the church on top of it, as opposed to doing it this way, because there are certainly some limitations to doing it in the opposite way, though it is not impossible to do. As long as you really take your time and phase it out, I think you can really pull this off. So they do have a beam up over here. I'm going to show you guys what the next phase is. Now we're going to be building the little alcoves where the actual caskets are going to go. To do this, we're going to bring this out by 7. We need to make sure we actually count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then bring it across with the 4, just like that. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. So 1, 2, 3, pick the wrong one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then bring that across. And that should give us the holes that we need. And then hopefully we have enough stability up top that it's not going to cause a major issue. we will see momentarily. I'll hold my breath while they dig this out. Okay, and that completes the first phase here. Let's review some of the damage, because I do believe there was some. Yep, so we lost a little bit of flooring. And admittedly, in my test build, I did not put the flooring in to the appropriate areas, so we really didn't have any kind of reference point for this. So this isn't unexpected. We're just going to have to work around it and try and do some repairs as necessary. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and let's see. We should be able to drop in a wooden beam there, and that should fix that issue. And then I think, let's see, what do we have going on here? That break. Oh, I guess it's a bit of an optical illusion. It's a little farther away than I thought it was. That's all right. Let's see. What can we do here? Oh, looks like we're getting another settler with carpentry of 20. Great. Maybe they can teach me how to not collapse structures while we are building new facilities. Looks like we have a bit of a collapse on the roof as well. Okay, well, we will just have to work on this. All right, so I have decided to leave some of the busy work like that out, and we are going to move forward with our build, and then I will go back and try to fix some of these issues later and figure out what I can do to reconfigure or sort out kind of where we're at. I think part of the issue is, like I said, in our test build that I did not have any of the floors or anything like that inside. And so I think that's causing some of the issues, is that I just didn't foresee some of these problems up front. We do need to add a new bed to our lodgings over here. So let me grab a new hay bed and we'll drop it in here real quick. That way our new settler has a place to live. I also need to go ahead and manage Edmund. Make sure that he has everything set correctly. Let's do the schedule real quick. All right, so we are back on track. Let's see where we are at on the build. So they've dug out this next layer, and naturally we are going to put in a wooden beam just for support purposes. That should get us taken care of there, and then we'll be able to move on to the next phase of the build. We're basically just going to repeat this a few times along the back, and then we'll start doing some of the detailing. So now that that's done, we're just going to do the exact same thing we did before. We're going to grab this, go up 4, 4, 4, and 4, leaving this center beam for support. And then once they're done digging that out, we're going to do another one like this. And that is going to be where our beams go. More than likely, I could probably solve some of my issues up top by adding more beams in here. We will approach that down the line. Ideally, I'll swap these out for stone arches in the architectural update, but for now, we're just going to live with our wood beams. So we'll wait for Jerry to quit digging here. It is a pretty fast process since this is mostly clay down here, which is also nice because we'll build up some clay. We don't really use a lot of clay in Wythenshawe, but I'm sure we can find some sort of purpose for all of this material that we're digging out. So we've got our first section opened up. I am going to tell them to start building beams because we can't move on without beams. And that way we have the additional support that we need. And we're out of wood again, it seems. So let's go take a visit in our wooded area over here. Wherever that is. I keep getting so mixed up looking for this. Let's grab some more trees. So just wipe out a bunch. Doesn't really matter that much. We have a ton of trees right now. It's like the forest corner of Wythenshawe. Controlled chaos. Now for the next phase, we're just going to repeat exactly what we've done before. Dig out these little chambers, these alcoves. Those are going to be where the actual crypts go themselves. We'll give them a minute to get that done. While they're working on that, actually, we can go ahead and dig out this next section and put in our wooden beam. We should have enough people now that they should be kind of rocking and rolling on this, so I'm hoping it doesn't take too terribly long. All right, now that the basic structure of our crypts is done and complete, the next thing we need to move on to is getting it lit up a little bit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we needed to unlock our candles for this, so we're going to go ahead and get those in place. I'm putting them on each interior pillar like so, both sides, that provide a little bit of lighting in here. And then we're also going to be putting them halfway through each of these chambers like this. And then we're just going to flip around and do this again on the same place. Make sure I actually did that in the same place. And just to make sure that we have a little more lighting, we are going to put some candles right here at the base of these steps. That'll make a little more sense once we move on to that phase of the build. Now that they're starting to put the candles in, our next major feat is going to be putting flooring in. We certainly don't want there to be an unpaved path throughout the crypts. We want to be a little more respectful than that. So we are going to grab this corner like this and drag it all the way up and fill in all of these spaces with limestone flooring. That'll provide at least some movement bonuses to them, and it also just aesthetically looks a little better in my opinion. All right, it is morning and they have completed the flooring, but it took a little more limestone than I thought it would, so I am trying to build up a little bit of a backstock. That way we can move straight forward with the next phase of the project. I'm gonna mark off a couple more areas here for them to get into. That way we can go ahead and keep building. So let's zip over to the church real quick and go down to the crypts. So as you can see, the crypts are done. So now we can move on to our next phase, and that is adding in limestone sarcophagi. So all we're going to do here is we are going to fit these into these little 3x1s that we have set out in each area. And this should provide us with a total of 24 burial places for our various settlers. And that is going to be hopefully more than enough. Hopefully we won't ever come close to 24 being buried, but with some of the new updates that are coming out, there are going to be aging mechanics, which means our settlers are going to get old and die. And so we need to try and prepare for that a little more than we have in the past. So this should get us taken care of for a long time, if nothing else. These guys are expensive, but I do think they are the best looking. You guys got to see kind of a sneak preview of what they look like when they're finalized here, and I think they look really sharp. Our next project's going to be trying to move these guys over, which will be quite fun. So let's get down back into the crypt and let them get this built. I am going to put this on fast forward and give them the opportunity to finish this up as quickly as possible. All right, and now that we are done with the crypts and all the sarcophagi are in place, we can move on to the next phase, which is re-exhuming our bodies that we dug up earlier and putting them down into the crypt where they can sleep for all eternity. So this is going to be another tricky one where we're going to basically have to do this one by one and as fast as humanly possible. So as you can see, Noda is unconscious. I was in the middle of getting ready to do the body exhuming, and I realized that I took off their summer apparel. And so I guess for a moment they got cold enough where it hit them so that they were going to be unconscious. I think Noda will be all right. Let's take a look at the stats. Yeah, here comes Cinnamon to carry her back. So we're good. Okay, so now we're going to try and exhume these bodies and basically do the same process we did earlier. We're going to try and go as quickly as possible. And as soon as somebody comes over and breaks the sarcophagus, we're going to have to pause and tell them to carry the body immediately. And they should take them down to the bottom. So let's keep an eye on this. There we go. Immediately paused. Barry's unhappy because he sees a body. Prioritize burial. There we go. And there we go. Adalbert's on his way to his eternal slumber. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing over here and just repeat. Okay, and that takes care of everyone. The last thing we really need to do to finish this off before we move on to the final phase is we need to go through and make sure that all of these have enemy corpses turned off. We don't really want them burying former enemies in our sacred crypts underneath the Church of Wythenshawe. All right, and that's gonna do it for that portion. Now we're on to our very last phase here, and we need to build a cover of some kind for this crypt. It wouldn't really be respectful if we didn't actually have a proper entrance and exit to this place. So the first thing we're gonna start with is we're gonna grab grated doors, and we're gonna drop those in like that. Let's go ahead and back up a little bit so we can actually see what we're doing here. We're gonna grab the limestone block wall, and we should be able to bring it out like this. And then I'm going to bring it out like that. And now that that's complete, the last phase that I want to do is I'm just going to fill this in here so that it looks like it connects into the church, but it's actually just a filled wall. And then we're finally going to put the roof on top like this. Make sure we turn it around the right way, bring it back, and there we go. Okay, and now that the structure itself is done, we just need to put on a little decoration. So let's go ahead and do that. For the decoration, we're going to take a Church of Restitutionist scroll and a Oak Brethren wall decoration. And then we're also going to come over here to furniture real quick, grab a couple of iron wall torches and put them out. I wanted to make sure that we represented both the religions that are going to be buried here. I figured since the Church of Wythenshawe itself is non-denominational and it allows both of our major religions to celebrate their faith there, it made sense that they should be able to be buried together. After all, they work together every day to make this settlement work. So without each other, they really don't have much. So I figured it was okay to make sure that they co-locate in the crypts as long as both of the religions are acknowledged. So that is going to do it for today's episode. So let's take a look at the crypt one last time and make sure that we get a good understanding of what we've accomplished here. We completely dug out underneath our church with very minimal disturbance to the actual structure itself and built out our beautiful crypts. We also transferred our fallen settlers to the crypts so that they can be safely stored underneath the church for all of time. We built this beautiful entrance to the church. I think it's beautiful anyway. Feel free to make a comment if you have any suggestions on how we can improve the appearance of this building. Hit me with it. I'd love to hear it. I tried to keep it as realistic as I could, but I think all in all it turned out pretty well. That's pretty much it. Not a lot to review this episode, guys. We really focused in on one project, and it actually took quite a long time in terms of recording, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give the video a like, and if you want to see more content like this in the future, please consider subscribing. This was Games Over Explained, playing Going Medieval, and we'll see you next time.